Hey guys, it's John. You're on the JRB Tree Climbing channel. I have a new knot introduction, and you've seen me do this before. I do it with some humility. When introducing a new knot, there's really no way to know for certain if someone has already devised this and introduced it. And if that's the case, we'll go ahead and use that name, but I will need some comments to that effect. I've been through Ashley's book of knots from end to end, and I've asked all my best friends. What I needed was a replacement for the buffalo hitch. What's the buffalo hitch? Well, it's something I introduced that builds on the bull hitch. It's a hitch that we can use to affix a ring. I needed a secure ring hitch, which is easy to tie, but also easy to remove, and all the other important properties we needed. And what I discovered is that in testing this, there's also a lot of applications where we can use it in conjunction with a carabiner as well. And in that regard, it could be a replacement for the poacher's knot or the scaffold knot that many of you use on a carabiner. And as you know, it's almost impossible to remove one after you've loaded it. You've got to get that thing off and then slide it off the end of the carabiner. Well, this hitch can be removed even after a strong load, even off of a ring. Okay, so I am going to show you how to tie this in detail, but I want to demonstrate here while I'm not looking at it how easy it is to tie, in that I was looking for something that I can reliably tie without needing to look at the knot, and even after it's been loaded. And that's the case here. The hitch is formed using a combination of two hitches that you're familiar with. One is the overhand noose knot. That is the scaffold knot or poacher's knot. I tend to use the poacher's knot myself. I've got a dedicated video on the scaffold, poachers, and overhand noose knots. And the other one is the girth hitch. By combining those two knots together, we wind up with a hitch which is really easy to tie. It's really easy to inspect. It's cinching and stable. It's very strong. Okay, so this very contrived, you would never use it this way. I'm really just demonstrating the features of the hitch. But I've got my body weight on the Moose Hitch in two places. And I'm just going to subject it to all of the forces that it might see in the course of use. So if a knot was going to be tight and difficult to be removed, now would be the time. If I had a scaffold knot on here, that would be difficult to remove. But I can simply break this with relative ease. I can break that and undo it. The ring pops off, and the poacher's knot that I used to form it in the beginning just spills out. That's a pretty easy task, and the reason I needed something that was easy to remove and to put back on is that we will be using this to form a JRB cinch. So up here on the tree I have another one, and this is the JRB cinch, but instead of being formed with the buffalo hitch, it's being formed with the Moose Hitch, and I'll show you that in detail, but that was the driver for this creation. Okay, let me show you how to tie it. You've got to be familiar with tying the poacher's knot. See my earlier video tying the scaffold, poachers, and overhand noose knots, but it's done in this fashion. I take the rope and I take the end and I hold it with my left hand. It's very important to start with the right end. And I will make two overhand turns back towards me and then pop the bite through both. That is a poacher's knot. It's got to be in your arsenal. You've got to be able to tie that just like you tie your shoes. And I haven't made that real tight, right? I haven't made it real tight. That's step one, create a poacher's knot. Step two is take your ring and put the bite through the ring, and then the ring through the bite. And what does that do? You've now formed a girth hitch. That ring has got a girth hitch formed with the loop from the poacher's knot. So you can see the two knots we've used to build this. And the last step is to take this crossing segment of the rope from the girth hitch and put it under the tail of the poacher's knot. And then just give that a tug. Give the standing end a tug and the working end, and I've got myself a hitch. It's that simple.
I needed to bring you in the lab just to make sure we got all of the detail. I'm going to start with the end in my left hand and form my poacher's knot. I'm assuming you already know how to tie the poacher's knot. It's prerequisite knowledge. And although the knot would be, you could form it either way, I like to have the crossing side down and the symmetrical side up. And I'll extend this loop just a little. I'll grab my ring. It goes through the ring, and then the ring goes through it. At that point, we can stop and pause, and you can clearly see the girth hitch, and you can clearly see the poacher's knot. And all we need to do is take this and lock it here. Now, it's not technically a lock. It's just providing stability. If this was not under, we'd still have a strong knot. It's just prone to destabilization in that the ring could come off more easily. This is the correct way to tie it. And let's just get a close look and inspect that. Now, I want to note that there have been incidents in the past where folks have created a scaffold knot or a poacher's knot incorrectly. I want to point out what would happen if that was the case. Now, by incorrectly, I mean that they made a mistake. Instead of holding the end, they held the middle of the line and they worked the wrong way. And they created a look-alike knot. Very, very dangerous situation. And the wrong end is running, right? This is very dangerous. What happens if you made this mistake and you began to tie a moose hitch? Well, I was kind of surprised at this, but watch what happens. So far, you think you're fine. And when you pull this end over and now you go to snug it up, look, it won't run. And so that would be an indicator that we've made a mistake. Now, again, I can't imagine actually making this mistake because it is dangerous, but this would be an indicator that I have a problem.
And this one, you just saw me load that with my body weight. So let me untie this one to show you how it's untied. It's untied by simply reversing the process. We're going to break it by taking, see how easy it was to pop that off even after I had all of my body weight on it? Just take that and pop it off. And now we can get a little bit of, we can make this loop bigger and then reverse the process. I take the end that I passed under, I just reverse the process and pass that back out. And then I un-girth hitch it. And of course, this will spill right out. Okay, one more time. Form a poacher's knot. And yes, you could, I will follow this video up with more detailed knot tying video. We could use an overhand noose. It's a little insecure. We could use a scaffold knot. It's a little bit of overkill. I like to use the poacher's knot for this. So I'll start with the end. I'm forming a poacher's knot. Go over my finger twice, working back towards my hand. 1, 2. Take that end and force it through the loops I've created. And as you inspect your poacher's knot, you've got 2 binding strands, 2 loops that are holding the running end. That's a poacher's knot, and I haven't set it real tight. I'm leaving it kind of loose and workable. I'm going to take my ring. Step 2 is to put the bite through the ring and then the ring through the bite. And now we have a girth hitch formed with the loop from the poacher's knot. And the last point is to put the crossing strand, and it's basically locked in, and tighten that up. Believe it or not, this thing is easier to tie than it is to untie. Sometimes I find myself getting confused in how to untie it, and so it's important to just reverse the process. Break it, give myself a little room, take the end that we locked and put it back through, and then pull this over. Now you usually can just pop it right over. You usually just pop it right over, but it depends how big your ring is, right? If I had a 1 foot ring, not that anybody climbed with something like that, I'd have had to let a little slack in first. Poachers. A poacher's knot plus a girth hitch equals a moose hitch. And of course the poachers just explodes that way. Okay, now I'm going to be using this in building a JRB cinch. You're going to see me climbing on this very shortly. Thank you.